I knew something was wrong the moment I pulled into my driveway and saw a freaking bounce house on my cornfield. Not beside it, not near it. No, smack dab in the middle of my rows of heirloom, organic, pesticide free, tender loving, care given corn. Little goblins were trampling over my crops while their parents drank craft beer like it was a Napa Valley wine tasting. My farm, the farm I built with my bare hands, had been turned into some deranged suburban Chuck E. Cheese. Who the hell are you people? I shouted, stepping out of my truck, still dusty from the red clay roads of my hiking trip. A woman in yoga pants, balancing a mimosa and holding a toddler with the same dead eyed stare she had, looked at me like I was the help. Excuse me, this is a private event. Please leave. A private event? On my land? I marched over to my barn, which had been turned into some Pinterest inspired nightmare wedding venue. Fairy lights, white drapes, a goddamn vintage photo booth. I had a panic attack when I saw my antique tractor parked at an angle with a flower garland around it and a sign reading Mr. and Mrs. Just Hitched. I was seeing red, and not just from the sunburn I got hiking. Then she strutted in. Karen, president of the HOA, the self-appointed queen of our neighborhood. 5'3" of spray tan delusion with a short blonde bob and enough entitlement to float a yacht. Oh, she said, pausing like I was the intruder. You're back early. I didn't even ask how she got access to the property. I didn't ask why strangers were sleeping in my barn or why someone had parked their RV next to my chicken coop like it was a KOA campground. Because I knew. Karen had rented out my farm while I was gone. She had the audacity to smile like she was doing me a favor. I had the keys from the last HOA emergency meeting, she said, waving her hand like she was swatting away a fly. I figured you wouldn't mind since it was sitting empty. Plus, we really needed a venue for Madison's engagement weekend. Madison, her Botox daughter who once told me almond milk came from albino cows. I called the sheriff. He arrived with two other officers, laughed when he saw Karen, and called her Miss K. They shook hands, patted backs, made jokes, then turned to me like I was the problem. Sir, you weren't using the property. There's no visible damage. Maybe next time, secure it better. I stared at him. That's not how laws work. He smiled like I was a toddler yelling about bedtime. Well, it is around here. That night, I sat on my porch, watching strangers play cornhole on the gravesite of my dignity. Karen waved at me like I was the hired help again. That's when something in me snapped. Something primal. Nuclear. You ever see a raccoon cornered in a trash can? That was me, except I had Wi-Fi, a real estate license, and no f***s left to give. She wanted to play games? Fine, I was about to go God mode. And her house? Oh, her precious colonial monstrosity with the fake shutters and a fountain that hadn't worked since 2009? It was about to be the opening act in the most humiliating revenge story the suburbs had ever seen. I didn't sleep that night, not a wink. I sat on my porch with a thermos of black coffee, watching the twinkle lights flicker across my fields like fireflies of betrayal. Karen had desecrated sacred land, the land I fertilized, plowed, and protected like it was my firstborn. And the cherry on top, her poodle had peed on my scarecrow. Twice. I counted. By sunrise, the plan had fermented into something gloriously wicked. See, what Karen didn't know was that 6 months ago, in an attempt to dodge taxes, she cleverly transferred the deed of her house into her LLC, an HOA-backed shell company called Serenity Holdings. She bragged about it at the last community meeting while sipping wine through a reusable straw and lecturing us about carbon footprints. She called it a sophisticated investment maneuver. I called it a gold mine. So I did what any wronged farm owner with a grudge, a grinning hatred, and access to county public records would do. I bought the debt on Serenity Holdings. Turns out Karen had been using HOA dues like her personal piggy bank, spa treatments, Botox, and a very suspicious $3,000 charge listed as decorative duck enhancements. The LLC was circling the drain faster than her latest facelift, and now I owned it. I walked into the courthouse dressed like a man with nothing to lose and everything to burn. The clerk looked up as I slid the documents across the counter with a smile that could cut granite. I'm here to execute a property transfer. 2 hours later, Karen's house legally belonged to me. Not just the land, not just the shell company, the whole damn house. Her name was on nothing but the Amazon packages she piled at the front door. and with the way she treated people, I doubted even Jeff Bezos would come to her defense. I didn't tell her right away. No. That would have ruined the symphony. Instead, I let her host one last HOA executive brunch, where she told everyone how she was reforming the neighborhood's aesthetic direction. I sat 3 rows back with sunglasses on, sipping sweet tea and smiling like I was in a Southern courtroom drama. Every time she said the words community standards, I giggled. 2 days later, I knocked on her door with a clipboard in hand. "Maintenance?" she asked, looking me up and down like I'd crawled out of a pothole. "You people are getting sloppier every day." "Nope," I said, handing her a notice. "I'm your new landlord. Rent's due on the 1st. And FYI, your flamingo lawn ornaments, they violate my aesthetic direction." She stared at the paper like it was written in ancient runes. "This is a joke." "Karen," I said, relishing the name like fine wine, "you rented out my farm while I was on vacation. I warned you not to mess with me. You didn't listen. Now your house is mine, and I've decided to convert it into a chicken sanctuary. You can stay, but you'll need to share the guest room with Clucky." She turned purple. Not red. Purple, like a grape with rage issues. "I will call the police." "Go ahead," I said. "Make sure to ask for Officer Chad. He signed the transfer himself, said it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen." Her jaw dropped. She lunged to slam the door in my face, but I stopped it with my boot and leaned in close. "This is just the start, Karen. You wanted war? Welcome to it." Karen was unraveling faster than a Walmart sweater in a wood chipper. 3 days into my ownership of her house, she started spiraling like a tornado in a trailer park. The kind of spiraling that includes screaming at squirrels and threatening to sue the postman for mail harassment. I hadn't even turned up the heat yet. But oh baby, it was coming. First, I had a moving truck deliver 50 live chickens to her driveway. No explanation, no warning. Just boxes marked "Premium Feathered Ladies, handle with respect." Her lawn looked like a barnyard Black Friday sale. By noon, 2 of the hens had nested in her yoga mat bin, and 1 had taken a solemn dump on her welcome mat. That one I named Justice. She called the police, of course. And of course, Chad showed up. The same cop who gave me a high five when I filed the property transfer. He stood there sipping gas station coffee, watching a chicken flap around her topiary like it was a rodeo event. "Karen," he said, wiping his nose, "it's legal. Man owns the house. If he wants chickens, he gets chickens." "They're feral," she shrieked. "They're free range," I corrected. Next came the open house. Not a metaphor, an actual open house. I posted the listing online. Historic HOA President's Residence, now a quirky farmstead retreat. Photos included her embarrassing collection of porcelain angel dolls, a rotting backyard gazebo, and a very tasteful picture of her front yard mid-chicken invasion. People came in droves. Realtors. Bloggers. A couple who ran a YouTube channel called Haunted Home Hunts. Karen tried to block the door with a dining chair and her Pomeranian. I offered fresh lemonade and homemade jam to guests while she screamed about trespassing laws. One guy mistook her for the eccentric caretaker and asked if she came with the property. I didn't correct him. The next day, she slunk into the HOA office, really just a glorified shed with delusions of grandeur, and tried to rally the board against me. Problem was, I'd already won over 2/3 of them by promising to replace the quarterly newsletter with a free beer subscription. Democracy, baby. Still, she made one last desperate move. She hosted an emergency HOA assembly and passed out glossy flyers that read, in bold Comic Sans, "Take back our streets from farm tyranny." She rented a megaphone and stood on her roof in a sun hat like she was leading a revolution. Her speech included the words invasion, illegal poultry, and somehow, this is worse than the time Sandra wore open-toe shoes in winter. Then came my masterpiece. I had the address legally changed to 1 Cluckingham Lane. Every GPS system, every map app, every delivery service now directed all parcels to Cluckingham Lane. Watching the Amazon guy hesitate while holding a box labeled Karen Vital Serums was pure poetry. Karen snapped. She charged down the street barefoot, mascara running like it was fleeing the scene of a crime. She hurled a jar of pickles at my mailbox and screamed, "You'll pay for this!" "Oh, I already did," I shouted back. "Market rate, baby." The next morning, she tried to leave, packed her Louis Vuitton knockoff, and shoved her poodle into a suitcase. But I had her car towed for violating HOA parking rules. Her rules. She stood there in the driveway, surrounded by chickens, holding a get out bag, and looking like she'd just lost the final round of Suburban Survivor. And I was just getting started. Generation 4, 600 words. The fourth day of the Karen apocalypse started with a billboard. I rented it, half a mile from the neighborhood entrance. Big, bold, and impossible to miss. A giant photo of Karen mid-scream during her rooftop HOA protest, with the caption, "Have you hugged your local menace today?" Beneath it, tours of Cluckingham Lane daily, eggs optional. The neighborhood group chat imploded by noon. Someone made it into a meme. Someone else made t-shirts. One guy got a tattoo. Karen tried to have the billboard removed, but since I technically leased it under her LLC, the advertising company politely told her to go peck herself. By then, Karen's tantrums had hit DEFCON 1. She was stomping around the cul-de-sac, waving cease and desist letters like expired coupons, threatening to sue anyone who so much as looked at Cluckingham Lane. She even tried to file a restraining order against my chickens. It was denied on the basis that chickens can't read. But Karen wasn't the kind of narcissist to go down without trying one last sneaky, underhanded power grab. Enter the property sabotage attempt. One night, she snuck out in black yoga pants, a hoodie, and neon Crocs like some deranged soccer mom ninja. Her goal? Dump a bag of wild birdseed across my fields to lure raccoons and ruin my next crop. Too bad I had motion sensors, thermal cams, and a llama named Hank with severe trust issues. The footage was magnificent. Karen creeping around like a cartoon burglar, Hank appearing like a demon in the mist, and her running full speed into my compost heap while screaming, "Someone call PETA!" I uploaded the footage to YouTube under the title Karen versus the Llama, Dawn of Dumb Decisions. Within 24 hours, it had 2 million views, a remix set to banjo music, and an auto-tune version titled Back Off Hank. Her humiliation became legend. Kids asked her for selfies. Influencers staged fake Karen sightings near her house. Someone parked an actual food truck selling revenge eggs in front of her lawn. The slogan, "Free range drama, $3.99 per dozen." Then came the real estate petition. You see, I'd quietly bought up 3 more houses in the neighborhood. One from a guy who moved to Belize to become a hammock influencer, another from a divorcee who sold it just to spite her ex, and a third from a college kid who only wanted beer money and a motorbike. With those houses under my belt, I petitioned to rezone the area from residential to agri-entertainment. Karen tried to stop it, of course. Marched into the zoning office in a neon pantsuit, dragging her poodle in a stroller. She made a speech. She cried. She tried to bribe the clerk with a Starbucks gift card and a half-eaten protein bar. They approved the petition unanimously. Overnight, my land became a registered agritourism venue, complete with the legal right to host events, sell goods, and name my driveway Cluckingham Expressway. Karen's house? Still technically mine. Still legally zoned for chicken activities, and now surrounded by wandering tourists taking photos with cardboard cutouts of Angry Karen, Cluckingham's Queen of Chaos. The final straw came when I rented her own backyard out for a bachelor party luau. I charged them extra to roast corn over her designer fire pit. The groom wore a shirt that said, "Karen ruined my childhood, so I got married next to her house." By sundown, she had barricaded herself indoors, windows covered in tin foil, clutching a rosary made of expired HOA bylaws. She whispered curses from her front porch and threw organic dog biscuits at passersby. Rumors swirled she was starting a cult or a podcast, or both, and just when it seemed like things couldn't possibly get more absurd, the real trouble began. It happened on a Wednesday, a cursed, unholy, kale smoothie dripping Wednesday. Karen snapped. Not angry letter to the HOA, snapped. Full exorcist on the lawn with a flamethrower, snapped. I woke up to shouting, chickens squawking, and a smell so violently chemical it burned the concept of air. Karen was in her bathrobe, hair like a raccoon nest, tossing bleach across Cluckingham Lane like she was auditioning for a Real Housewives, Biohazard edition. Her poodle barked in Morse code from the roof. My scarecrow had been stabbed with a carrot, a whole damn carrot. I stepped onto my porch and waved. "Morning sunshine, you redecorating or auditioning for a prison sentence?" She shrieked like a banshee on fire, "I'm taking back what's mine." Then she kicked over a coop, my coop, Justice's coop. That was it. I don't remember walking. I just remember arriving. Face to face, 2 feet away from the Ihoe horror herself, with a garden gnome in one hand and a vendetta in the other. You want a war? I said, seething. This is war. But I don't need bleach. I've got receipts. She lunged, not metaphorically, literally lunged at me with a bottle of essential oil labeled Peace Aura. I sidestepped like a vengeful matador and watched her faceplant into a pile of compost. Right there, surrounded by cucumbers, regret, and the remains of her last bad decision, Karen let out a guttural scream that summoned the actual police. Blue lights. Sirens. Real sirens this time. Not Officer Chad. New cops. Turns out someone, probably her own niece, live-streamed her bleach rave and tagged every government account known to mankind. The footage went viral faster than a TikTok dance in a thunderstorm. Code enforcement, animal control, and 3 separate police cruisers rolled up like it was Black Friday at Karen's Soul. The lead officer stepped out, face unreadable. Ma'am, we've had over 40 complaints. Destruction of private property, illegal chemical dumping, violation of zoning ordinances, and assault with a cucumber? She's lying, Karen screeched, pointing at me like I was the devil incarnate wearing flannel. He stole my house. The officer turned to me. Sir, do you have documentation of ownership? I didn't answer. I just held out a giant manila envelope, beautifully labeled, The Karen Chronicles, Volume 1, Wrath of the Hoa. They flipped through it. Deed transfers, financial records, the court ruling, photographs of Karen dressed like a deranged mother goose, vandalizing her own porch. The officer paused at the image of her waving a rake like a javelin. He looked up. You're the legal owner? I smiled. Since Tuesday? Want some eggs? Karen made a sound so deep, so primal, it disturbed 3 birds from a tree and possibly altered local weather patterns. Ma'am, the officer said, voice stern, you are trespassing on private property, obstructing commerce, and engaging in public nuisance activity. We're going to need you to come with us. She tried to run. She got about 4 feet before tripping over her own dog stroller and face-planting a second time into my front lawn, right in front of Clucky's commemorative statue. Oh yes, there was a statue. They cuffed her. The neighborhood stood and cheered like it was a sports movie finale. Kids high-fived. Dogs barked the national anthem. One elderly man wept and whispered, "Finally." As they shoved Karen into the cruiser, she screamed, "You haven't seen the last of me." I leaned in and grinned. Oh, I really hope not. Volume 2 needs a villain. And with that, the Queen of the Ahoe was dethroned, escorted off Cluckingham Lane, and left to explain to the legal system why she tried to destroy a farm with essential oils and a vegetable arsenal. Justice had feathers, and a deed, and a sense of humor.